Мэтт Dabrowski – молодой человек, проживающий в Лос-Анджелесе и занимающийся разработкой инди-игр уже долгое время. И его последний и самый популярный проект под названием Streets of Rogue привлек уже немало людей. Так как разработка ведется уже долгое время, администраторы официальной группы Streets of Rogue ВКонтакте решили взять у Мэтта интервью, в котором они затронули не только тонкости разработки, но и некоторые факты из его личной жизни. Приятного просмотра.
Hello, this is Matt Dabrowski. I wanted to say a hello to the Russian Streets of Rogue community. Thank you for all your questions today. It's been a lot of fun answering them, and thank you for supporting the game.
We know that your nickname consists of your initials. What's A in it?
Yeah, that's right. So my middle name is Alex. So that's where the name Mad Guy came from. I've been using that for, I guess, about 21 years at this point. That's when I first got on the internet and started using that name. The number behind it doesn't really mean anything. Like MADGUY90 is my Twitter handle. People, I think, assume that it's the year I was born. It isn't. It's not necessarily bad that people assume that, because that makes me seem younger than I actually am, I guess. No, I was actually born in '84. So yeah. So that's the story of my my internet handle. Yeah.
Okay, now we know that you are from 90s.
That's correct. I'm an 80s baby.
Oh yeah. Now you live in Los Angeles, but what's your hometown? Where did you spend your childhood and how was it?
Yeah, so I grew up in Burlington, Massachusetts, which is a pretty standard East Coast, like suburby kind of place. It's like 20 minutes from Boston, Massachusetts. Pretty non-notable for anything except being the birthplace of Amy Poehler, I guess. What else? Yeah, not a whole lot. Yeah, I mean, where did I spend my childhood and how was it, you ask? I was all right. I mean, you know, nothing really. I had a pretty good childhood. You know, good parents, decent schools, all that. Nothing really notably terrible happened to me during my first 18 years. Yeah, I live in Los Angeles now, which I originally moved to for college back in 2002, and then I moved back to the East Coast, and then I moved back here a couple years later, and I've been here for about 10 years at this point. No plans to leave anytime soon. I'm enjoying it here.
What was your motivation to become a game developer? Did you like video games as a child? Which ones were your favorite?
So my motivation, yeah, when I was a kid, I started playing video games when I was about 6, I think for my 7th birthday I got a Nintendo, and pretty much right there I knew I wanted to become a game developer. And that was pretty much all I wanted to be for my entire childhood and into my adulthood. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much all I did when I was a kid. I just played games. When I wasn't playing games, I was reading magazines about games, and when I wasn't doing that, I was attempting to use game making software. Yeah, I mean the first game making software I used was when I was about 8 years old. Actually, it was a program called Game Maker, but not the Game Maker that people today know about. It was something called it was from a company called Recreational Software Designs. So it's now known as RSD Game Maker. This really old 90s version of Game Maker that existed. Yeah, so I had that when I was 8 years old. That was sort of my first experience with game development. Which games were my favorite as a kid, you ask? I was really into Doom when I was a kid. I was also really into like sort of LucasArts graphic adventures. Things like Day of the Tentacle, Sam and Max Hit the Road, stuff like that. But I mean, I pretty much played everything. I mean, I played, platformers on Nintendo Genesis. I had, all of the 16-bit systems, all the 32-bit systems. pretty much owned every console that existed around that time, and all the major game releases that came out, or at least rented them. I wasn't rich or anything like that, but I try to at least play games or be informed about games, all the time. A lot of kids, they started growing up with around that time, grew up playing games. Pretty much everybody I knew played games when I was a kid. Some people grew out of it, and I just didn't, I guess. So yeah, now I guess I make them for a living. That's cool.
Was it your decision to enter University of Southern California? Did you have other choices? Was it worth it?
Yeah, so I University of Southern California. Yeah, that was my decision. I had applied to a whole bunch of different schools, and I did pretty well in high school, but I guess just as complete luck. I ended up getting into like everywhere I applied to. So I had about 6 different choices, which is very fortunate, very lucky. But I ended up choosing USC, which was like the furthest away from my home. I'm trying to remember exactly why I chose that over the other ones. It had a really good computer science department, and I sort of intended to become a games programmer, or at least wanted to know about that sort of thing, so that I would have a good way of getting into the games industry. And this was a long time. This was a long time ago. This is before like game development programs really existed at universities. But USC had one of the first ones that was out there, and they still do. They're still regarded as one of the better ones. So I was, I also, there was also that aspect of it. So I just thought, yeah, this would be a nice choice. Let me see. What was it worth it, you ask? Yeah. What's that?
Yes.
Yeah.
What
Was it worth it? I think it was. These days, like, it's really, I don't know, it's really hard for me to remember. I'm sure, like, a lot of the stuff that I learned there in the programming world was kind of ingrained into my skull over time. Overall, I mean, yeah, like, school in general, I don't know. I never really enjoyed going to school. I didn't really enjoy going to college either. Was it necessary to do what I do? I don't know. I mean, like, probably not. I mean, overall, I don't regret going. It certainly helped me to get, in the games industry for, the time that I worked there. As far as what I learned, I mean, I think I've learned a lot more just making stuff on my own than I did, going to classes there. But I don't know, like, I again, who knows? Like, I mean, I spent a lot of time doing programming courses there, a lot of time with that stuff, and I mean, it's totally possible that I just have a lot of I guess knowledge built up from there that I don't even think about today, that just sort of it's just sort of been lingering there for years and years. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
Yes,
Okay, so yeah, I'd say it was worth it, sure.
What are the pros and cons of game development?
So what are the pros and cons of game development? Well, I mean, I guess the major thing, the major pro here is just complete creative freedom. I mean, just being able to design and program what I want, when I want, and on my own schedule. I mean, that can't really beat that. As for I mean, that's for me. I mean, like, I mean, if you're working in a much larger team, I mean, indie can have a lot of I mean, like, indie today can mean like a team of 10 people. I guess that wouldn't have been an indie like 20 years ago or even 15 years ago, but yeah, today, I mean, yeah, even the scope of indie is it's a much larger scope than it used to be. But yeah, if you're talking about just like me, like kind of solo game development, or maybe like development of like a few people or something like that. Yeah, I mean, like that stuff applies just complete creative freedom and the ability to do things on your own schedule. Now, for solo game development, the major con is this: it's a little bit isolating. You know, it's like, I mean, I basically just, get up and immediately can go to my computer and start working, and I don't have to deal with anybody for the most part. And that's not really for everybody. I mean, like, it kind of works for me. I do kind of miss working at a major company. I won't say that I miss, like, having to do things on a particular schedule or getting up and having to drive to work or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, solo game development, it does kind of make me miss being around other people a bit. And of course the other cons are, I guess, just as from a business and financial standpoint, as an indie. Well, I mean, there's really no guarantees of anything. I mean, Streets of Rogue, fortunately, has done quite well, but it could have just completely flopped and sold like no copies. I mean, that's what happens with a lot of indie games, and that's the unfortunate reality of things. It's like, just because you made something doesn't mean that there's going to be an audience for it and that it's going to sell enough copies to even pay you the equivalent of a minimum wage salary. It's a really tough kind of industry right now, and a lot of people want to do this kind of thing, and there's tools out there like Unity and Game Maker that are accessible to a much broader audience than used to be available. It used to be like, if you wanted to be in this field, then you really needed to basically the barrier of entry is a lot lower. There's more people trying to do this, and therefore there's more competition. And as you're probably aware, like, Steam has a lot more games than it used to now. I mean, they open up the floodgates, and now anybody can put anything on. So when I was developing Streets of Rogue, I mean, that was just a constant worry of mine that I just wouldn't be able to support myself doing this. But yeah, fortunately the game is done well in early access. So I mean, yeah, I haven't really had to worry as much about that stuff in the last couple of years since the game has been out. But that was a major thing. That was a major, I guess, con. Let me see other major pros and cons. Well, I guess that's the major stuff that I can think of at the moment.
You worked in Blizzard Entertainment. Was it a good experience, and what about other jobs?
Yeah, I really liked working at Blizzard Entertainment. It was I was only there for about 7 months. It was my first job out of college, actually, and I was a QA tester there, which is kind of the lowest rung on the ladder. And I was actually working the night shift there, and I was getting paid I think less than $10 an hour. There, I think they've raised what they pay their testers nowadays. This was like about a year and a half after World of Warcraft came out, so they were just starting to become like really flush with cash at that point. I mean, they were just raking it in. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was just this sort of room with a bunch of dudes in their 20s, just testing the game and being like nerd dudes in their 20s, and yeah, that was a lot of fun. But then I ended up leaving there because I wanted to sort of move closer to home at the time, and I kind of felt like if I was working QA there, I'd be working QA there for the next 10 years or something, or I didn't see any real path out of there. So I took a job as something called development support at a company called Tilted Mill Entertainment, who had done a lot of these simulation games in the 90s, like the Caesar series, They had just finished up Caesar 4 at the time, and they started working on a game called SimCity Societies around the time that I joined up there. And I really enjoyed working at this company as well. You know, my job was like QA, but it was also like I got to work more closely with the developers, whereas at Blizzard I didn't even meet any of the developers at any point. And it was like QA mixed with pretty much anything else that anybody else at the company didn't want to do. So I had my hands in a lot of things in that game, and yeah, it was just a lot of fun to work there. Unfortunately, the company pretty much shuttered after that game came out, and a little bit after that. Let's see. Yeah, that's right. Then I worked at a company called I got this job at a company called HB Studios in Canada. Unfortunately, that job lasted a very short time, actually 4 days. So I like moved to Canada for this job, and it ended up being 4 days, and then I got laid off because the company, like, they hired me at just the wrong time and were like downsizing, and it's just kind of a mess. So then I was basically out of the games industry for a few years because you know, I don't know, that I was kind of like trying to find other work, and I was not having a whole lot of success, and I just took another job. And you know, it's like, oh, this is actually, you know, paying me pretty well, and I don't have to worry about you know, work right now, and I can just kind of try to go live as a normal 20-something. So I think I'll try this for a little bit. So I was in non-games, I was in quality assurance for not games, for like websites and stuff for a few years. Yeah, started to miss games. Always kind of wanted to get back into it. So eventually I did.
You mentioned some points about Steam. What is your attitude to Steam platform? Is it comfortable for you to use it?
Sure. Well, I mean, as a developer, I mean, it's really easy. I mean, compared with, like, you know, getting stuff on the consoles, like Streets of Rogue, by the way, it's in the console certification process right now, and it is a major process to put out a game on consoles and put out new builds of the game on consoles. Steam, it's very, very easy. And like I was mentioning before, I mean, the barrier of entry is very low right now. I think right now it's like a $100 fee, and you know, you have to get some stuff approved, but it's pretty basic stuff. I mean, but for me to use it, I mean, I think it's a great platform right now. First of all, it's if I want to put out a new build of the game, it's really, really easy. I mean, it takes seconds. It could not be easier. So, like, yeah, for me, and things like, you know, adding achievements and all that, I mean, that's all pretty simple. I mean, the Steam backend interface, I've never really had any major problems with it. As far as like discoverability and, you know, other aspects of Steam goes, I mean, yeah, you're asking, like, what do I think of Steam as a platform? Again, it's like it's kind of a broad question, but I'll try to cover some of these things. So, like, yeah, I mean, Steam, it's basically, it'll work well for you as a developer if it does. I mean, here's the thing: Streets of Rogue is in a kind of a fortunate position because it's, you know, it did well initially, and it got good reviews. So, you know, like, a lot of traffic comes from people going to, like, other pages on the Steam site and it recommending the game to them. Like, they might be on the page for another roguelike game, and they'll see a thing that says more like this, Streets of Rogue. So I mean, like, Steam is good for discoverability right now for me. Like, a lot of my traffic to the game's page just comes from directly within Steam. But again, I mean, like, this is a game that's done well. I don't think their algorithm will work particularly well for games that like, if you just put out something and it doesn't initially hit, And by the way, actually, I mean, like they're apparently changing up their algorithms somewhat for the next year, so we'll see how that goes. We'll see how this changes things. I mean, I hate to have to, rely on this sort of thing, and we only do to some extent. I mean, there are obviously other factors. There's word of mouth. There's people putting out YouTube videos, Twitch streamers, and all that. So basically, yes, Steam has worked well for me so far. Also, the fact that TinyBuild, my publisher, they have a relationship with Steam. So when the game first came out, we actually did a free weekend, the first weekend that the game came out. So anybody could download the game and play it for free, and they just couldn't keep it past those first 3 days. And that was like a deal they did with Steam. And that worked out really well. So I was, I think it was actually the first like early access launch that launched with a free weekend at that point. So yeah, I mean that worked out really well. But again, I mean, like, if I was just another developer, like just putting something on Steam for the first time with no publisher or anything, I suspect things wouldn't necessarily go quite as well. So, but for me, I mean, Steam has been good to me so far.
What about Epic Store? Do you think about using it for selling your games? Because we know that nowadays some developers prefer this platform.
Yeah, I mean, it's still really early. I mean, yeah, right? I mean, I saw that thing they did. So, what is the rate? Is it like 88% for developers as opposed to 70% on Steam? Yeah. So, right. So, Steam is a 70-30 split. Steam takes 30% of the sales, and I take, or me and my publisher take 70%, whereas I think it's like 88% on the Epic Store. Yeah, I mean, Epic's still, of course, I could see them becoming a big player in this. Obviously, they have Fortnite, and that's, I think I just heard something like that's Netflix's biggest competition. Fortnite specifically is Netflix, so that's kind of ridiculous. So yeah, they have the opportunity to make something huge, but I mean, it's still in the early stages. There's only there's like 10 games on there or something like that. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little early to say, but it'll be interesting to see where that goes. It's yeah, as of right now, I mean, actually, my publisher TinyBuild has one game on there right now, which is the Hello Neighbor sequel. I don't know. Will Streets of Rogue be on there? I don't know. I'll have to talk with them about it. Actually, I haven't really thought about it a whole lot, but we'll see.
What was the most difficult part for you in creation of Streets of Rogue?
So, I mean, generally speaking, the most difficult thing about making Streets of Rogue is that it's a lot of things. It's a very open-ended kind of game. I try to give the player as much freedom as you can, and when you do that, you open up there's a lot of ways that things in the game can interact with other things that I hadn't anticipated, and that creates a lot of opportunity for bugs and balance issues. So I mean, just in general, like just getting a handle on these bugs and balance issues has been a major challenge. I have a bugs list that is just enormous right now. You might not think it from playing the game, because the game works pretty well, it functions pretty well. But if you dig really deep, you can find all kinds of little issues here and there, little imbalances, little exploits. And to some extent, that I think that's okay, because of the nature of the game. I think it kind of adds a little bit of charm to it. Even it's kind of like it's like a Bethesda game. People kind of anticipate that kind of stuff and are willing to accept it. Well, not always. Okay, I mean, Fallout 76. I mean, they kind of went a little far with that, but I mean, the trade-off is you get this highly detailed world where there's a lot of potential and a lot of possibilities. So one of my greatest secret weapon when working on this game has actually been the feedback forum, the user feedback forum, as well as the Steam forums, because without those bug reports, this game could not exist in its current state. Like, obviously I'm a single person working on a game. I don't have any kind of budget for like a QA team. So, the people who are playing this game in early access are essentially acting as my QA team. And I mean, like, because I don't really have time to play the game, to just like go through and play the game and check for bugs all the time. So people informing me about this stuff has been really, really crucial to the game becoming what it is and becoming a really playable and fun experience. I don't know what the game would look like today if I hadn't had that kind of feedback. So yeah, I mean, just generally speaking, yeah, bugs and balance and just trying to get a handle on all of the ways that things in the game can interact with each other. I guess secondly, there's the multiplayer aspect of the game, which is something that I'd actually been working on the game for, I think, a few years at the point when I added on multiplayer, and it's been just an enormous challenge. To anyone who's thinking of making a game, I wouldn't recommend grafting on multiplayer when your game is already, like, at a very established kind of point, because, I mean, man, it's just an enormous challenge, and it still continues to be an enormous challenge. I'm still fixing, major bugs in that to this day, even though we're getting close to the ship. Yeah, if you're thinking of adding multiplayer to your game, maybe think very carefully about that, because it's going to add a lot of workload. I will say that.
Was the hard decision to make a downgrade from Alpha 67 to 66? We saw a lot of negative feedback saying that January 66 Alpha was more buggy than December's one. For example, some people had black screen after it.
Black screen? I think it sounds like a bit of a different issue, actually, if they're seeing a black screen. The major issue that I had with 67 was actually related to the multiplayer mode. If they're seeing a black screen, I'm not really sure why that would be, because the game hasn't changed its engine at all, and I didn't really change anything that would have caused like, a major shift in like the way the game starts up or anything like that. I hadn't really heard about this, actually, to be honest with you. That's news to me if that's happening. The main reason for my doing that was we're porting the game, like I had mentioned, we're porting the game to different consoles right now. Me and a team of people who are helping out with that. And one of the consoles is the Nintendo Switch, and the way networking works on there is quite a bit different. We couldn't just, it's not like a plug and play kind of thing, and a lot of work needed to be done to make that possible. So I needed to make a lot of changes internally to how some of the multiplayer stuff was structured, and that caused some issues that I tested for, but I didn't necessarily catch. So, I thought everything was okay, and as it turned out, it wasn't. And there was these issues with just objects and NPCs in the game just completely disappearing if you were a multiplayer client. And I was like, why are all these people seeing this issue? I'm not seeing this. And then I did some more testing, and I realized, oh, okay, crap! I actually need to do a whole bunch more work on this to make this stable. So basically, 67 probably shouldn't have been released without a lot more testing. But So yeah, I decided to revert that, and because Steam makes it very easy to just like say, oh, you want to just go back to this older build, like it's like a 2-click process basically. So I figured, it's better for people to be playing on a stable build than this thing that I just released. So yeah, but that was a pretty easy decision to go back to that one. But 68, which I just released a couple days ago, I think is in pretty good shape, and I haven't had any complaints so far. Knock wood, but yeah, I think all the multiplayer issues should be fixed in that. It should actually be working better than it did before. I made a whole bunch of fixes in the last version, so if you play multiplayer regularly, maybe you'll notice, maybe you won't, but yeah, still in the process of doing that. I have a whole bunch more fixes coming as well. That's pretty much all I'm doing right now, just bug fixes and polish.
Burger Joint, tell us more about it. It's not your first game, but I think you feel sort of special about this one, do you? Tell us more about it and your other games. What feelings did you have when finally finished each one of them? Did they help you in getting an inspiration for Streets of Rogue?
Oh, good. I'm very glad to hear that. Very glad indeed, because it's been a lot of work to get it at this point. It's been a tough couple of weeks, so very glad to hear that. So yeah, Burger Joint was a game that for those who haven't heard of it, which is probably pretty much everyone, so there was a game called ZZT that came out in the early 90s, and it was the first game ever made by Epic Games and its founder Tim Sweeney, who of course later on went to do the Unreal Engine and Fortnite. But it was a game, but it was also a platform for making games. It was a game creation toolkit. So there was a whole community based around making games for the ZZT platform. And I made a game called Burger Joint, which was this game that takes place entirely in a single day in a burger joint restaurant. And all these kind of weird, crazy things happen. Like there's like a bear in the freezer, and there's like terrorist attacks and all this weird stuff happening. And I made that in about a month and a half when I was in 8th grade. So I was like 14 years old. And that was probably the first like real major like kind of successful game thing project that I ever released on the internet. So it was 21 years ago now. So yeah, I mean that one will always have a nice special place in my heart. Sure, yeah. Tell us more about your other games. So yeah, after that, after I sort of finished working with stuff on ZZT, I made an adventure game kind of in the old style of LucasArts games called Aftershocked, which is just this sort of post-apocalyptic weird comedy adventure game thing. And actually it's funny, there's a lot of references to Aftershocked in Streets of Rogue, like the Resurrection. Nobody's ever mentioned this to me before because I assume nobody's actually played this game, but like the Resurrection shampoo from Streets of Rogue is in Aftershocked as well. Some other little things as well. I actually considered, like, for a while, like secretly putting Streets of Rogue in the Aftershocked universe, but I don't know. I don't think it ended up not doing that. But the game, yeah, I mean the game got a little bit of recognition at the time. I mean this was 2002. So I mean the game is pretty much forgotten. It's barely even Googleable at this point. But it was on like the monthly disc of Computer Gaming World magazine, and I forget. There was a few. I think it was in another magazine's disc as well at some point. But yeah, that was cool. Getting some people seem to enjoy that one. And then a few years later, I released a game called Between Heaven and Hell, which was something I did throughout college. I released that in 2006. It was kind of an homage to games like Another World and Prince of Persia, and it actually used digitized actors, so I'm actually in the game. Like it's me in like the cinematics. We recorded like footage of me running around to like, you know, create an animation of the main character walking. And that took about 2.5 years to make, and not too many people have played that one. But I mean, like I still enjoy playing it from time to time. I don't know. It's the thing about these games is that they I never really expected them to like have like a huge audience or anything like that. This is the pre-Steam days. Like Steam wasn't even accepting indie games at this point. The concept of indie games was barely even like a thing. I was just like, well, this will probably help me get a job in the games industry. So that was the main goal with those. It's just also just you know, because I enjoyed making them, and it's cool. I enjoy creating things, but the end goal wasn't like to make a bunch of money or something off of these, or have like a huge audience. It was just, you know, to make something and have something for my resume as well. But did they help in you getting an inspiration for Streets of Rogue? Not really. I mean, like I said, these were things I did a long ways ago. But they did kind of instill in me the idea that I could actually, like, you know, make a game and finish it, having done it a few times before. So, you know, knowing that it's easier to get started on a project, I think, when you know that you are actually capable of finishing it.
Who are Craig Barnes and Matthew Weeks? How did you meet them?
So Craig Barnes is he's a composer. He did all the music for Streets of Rogue, and I actually met him the first time I demonstrated Streets of Rogue at an event. It was at a sort of side like, you may have heard of the Indiecade Festival. I think it's based in Los Angeles. They may have another one at somewhere else in the world. I forget. But they had like a little side room where they were showing off people's new games, and I met Craig there. The first time I ever showed it to anybody, and he saw potential in it, and you know, he was looking to get into the world of indie game composing. So, you know, shortly after, he started doing music and sound effects for the game.
You mean that Streets of Rogue is his first experience in this sphere?
I don't know if it was his first experience, but it was one of his very early experiences. I mean, you know, he'd been doing music. I mean, he'd been doing music for a long time. I mean, that's been his living for a long time. It's just that, you know, he's also a gamer. He wanted to make games or make music for games, and so, you know, you got to kind of hustle when you do that. You know, he goes to a lot of events and things and talks to a lot of people, makes a lot of connections, and this was sort of him towards the beginning of his career in this. And you know, fortunately, you know, he's been able to do music for a lot of other games at this point, and you know, make I think most of his living this way. So I'm real glad he's been able to do that. And Matthew Weeks contacted me. I had a devlog for a while on tigsource.com. I had a devlog there, and Matthew Weeks, he's been doing pixel art for games for a while, and he just contacted me off there, and you know, he was insistent that he wanted to work on it, and I initially hadn't even really considered getting another artist. Then he was just like, you know, let me try adding some of my own art and seeing what I can do. And you know, I like this stuff, and so I started contracting him out to do art for the game. I've never actually met him in person, or actually even spoken to him like this, but Matthew, I appreciate your efforts, and would love to have you back and doing other stuff at some point.
How is it to cooperate with Tiny Build? Do they constrain you?
Tiny Build's great. They really have not had any like major influence on the direction of the game. They pretty much just leave me alone. I initially came to them after GDC, Game Developers Conference 2016. I had some interest from different publishers, and I was like, oh, I better like kind of weigh all my options. And I hadn't met them at GDC, but I contacted them, and I ended up going with them. So I basically just brought them this thing, and they, I guess they enjoyed playing it. They saw potential there, and so they took it on. And let's see, where am I? There's no like constraint at all. I mean, the multiplayer was actually a heavy suggestion from Alex, who's the head of Tiny Build. He's like, you should really add online multiplayer to this, and like, yeah, I don't know, that sounds pretty difficult. And I was just like, yeah, all right, I guess I'll do it. Same with the four player co-op mode. Actually, the original reason that the 4-player co-op mode was added was because they wanted to show the game at different PAX events, and there was no like 4-player mode in the game. So I was just like, yeah, at the time it was only like a 2-player local co-op game. So I was just like, okay, I got a week before PAX, I'm gonna whip something up. And it turned out to be a really, really, really hard, strenuous, difficult week, but I managed to get something ready for PAX, and it was a hit at the show. So they featured the game at like, I think 6 or 7 different PAXs so far. It's just a fun thing, because it draws a nice audience apparently. I have not actually been to any of these PAXs to see it, unfortunately, because I'm always just here working. But yeah, I mean, they've done a nice job with things. They hooked me up with the porting studio that's currently porting the game to console. They did that initial deal with Steam where we got the free weekend and a bunch of advertising. So, I think they've done a real nice job so far with it.
What is the most important thing in your life?
What is the most important thing in your life? Well, that's a big question. Let's see. Well, if I didn't say, like my fiance, I think she would get very angry. So I'll just go with that. What is I don't know. Was there any way to narrow that down a little bit? Most important thing. Thing is a pretty broad category. Sure. Well, I guess just, yeah. Like, aside from that, just having a sort of balance, which is becoming more and more evident as I've gotten into sort of this major crunch period of the game, which has been going on for about 8 or 9 months right now. But it sort of makes me realize that balance is definitely certainly important. I try not to just work on this game. I try to I spend time working out as well. I try to have some relaxed time. It hasn't always worked out quite as well lately, but that's some advice I think would any indie developer would do well to take, is just don't spend all of your waking hours making this thing, because it will destroy you if you try to do that, and you'll probably be a lot less productive as well. Yes, balance, most important thing.
Do you motivate yourself? If so, in what way?
So it's not really that hard for me personally to get motivated to work on this game. I know that's a big issue for a lot of people. Like, if you read the game dev subreddit, it's something that pops up very often. It's people having problems getting themselves motivated to work on the thing that they want to work on. For me, it's only been a problem. Motivation has only been a problem when I'm not interested in, and when I don't really have, like, when I don't really care that much about the thing that I'm working on. Like, for example, well, when I was working in jobs that were not in the games industry, I would say I was a much worse employee than I was as a games industry employee, because I just didn't care about what I was doing and my output suffered. And the same goes for when I'm trying to learn new things. Like, for example, at some point I tried to learn, how to make websites, how to do web development, that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, what my end goal for this? What is my end goal for gonna be like to make a cool website or something? I just don't care. Like, what am I trying to actually accomplish here? It's like I've never really tried. One piece of advice that's often given to game developers is that you should start making small games, and that's probably good advice. And don't like take on more than you can handle. That's probably great advice for most people. For me, I've always had to like start working on something enormous, like start working towards something that if I want to learn a new skill, like for example Unity, I started learning Unity like back in 2014, about 8 months into this game's development. I was initially using a different engine, and it's like if I had just started trying to learn Unity and I didn't have any particular goal in mind, I just wanted to learn a piece of software, I think I wouldn't have done so well. But it's like, okay, I want to make Streets of Rogue, I need to learn how to do that. So it wasn't hard to get myself motivated to learning this piece of software, because it's like it's a means to an end, and I know what that end is. If I know what the end goal is, it's a lot easier to get motivated, I think. And in this case, in the case of the last few years, I've always known what I wanted Streets of Rogue to be and the direction that was heading, and it's just a massive amount of work that I need to sink in to actually get it there. So, with that goal in mind, I've just I get up every day and I start working immediately, but I don't have to like psych myself up or something. Be like, okay, here we go. It's generally pretty easy for me to motivate myself. Oh, caffeine helps also, but I drink like an energy drink a day. Not too much caffeine, but that helps.
What question would you like to answer, but it's never asked?
I don't know. I think. Let's see. I always get excited to talk about like technical aspects of the game. People generally don't really ask about like how I accomplished certain things in the game, like how I pulled off certain tricks, or how the AI is able to do certain things it's able to do, or whatever. I always appreciate when I get those very technical questions, but I don't really get them very often, so that's always nice. Also, just stuff about like the older games that I've done. It's nice to know people are like occasionally I'll get like an email about like one of my old games, like Between Heaven and Hell or Aftershock, and I'm like, oh my god, you actually played that. So I don't know. I wish more people had knew about those or had played them, and I don't know, queried me about them occasionally, but it's okay. That's practically a different lifetime that I made those things. I have, and we'll see what happens with the next project that I do. Of course, it's a matter of funding, and again, we'll see how Streets of Rogue does when it comes out. If it does really well, maybe I could just fund the whole thing myself. If not, there are places that are able to put up the money. Maybe Tiny Build could. I have some other connections as well.
Have you ever thought about gathering a team of developers? It's good to be on your own, but sometimes it can become a huge problem in future. We hold not only a Russian Streets of Rogue community, but several other ones as well, one of which is Cubolds. Wolfram von Funk, the creator of Cubold, has been making a promising game since 2011, refusing any offers of help from fellow developers, even from Notch, who created Minecraft. So he was selling keys for alpha without even a half of promised content, and after that he just vanished. Now once in a while he posts something, but well, it's complicated.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hadn't really heard of this game before, and I'm not really aware of what his situation is. Do you think it's because he's working? It's because he's working alone on this. I mean, has he had financial issues? Is the game not sold well enough for him to continue making it? Yeah, I don't really. I mean, I can't really speak to this. I don't really know anything about it. Well, that sucks. Well, fortunately, I mean, working alone hasn't really been a huge problem for me. Like I said, I wouldn't really recommend it to most people, but you know, I've been doing this for. I mean, I stopped working at my previous job about 4 years ago, and I've been working on Streets of Rogue full time for the past 4 years. And you know, for 2 of those, I wasn't selling the game. Fortunately, I'd saved up some money before the game went on Steam, so I went for 2 years without pay. But yeah, I mean, so far during both of those cycles, between the unpaid cycle and the Steam cycle, where I'm getting lots and lots of feedback, you know, I've been able to keep in control of things. So I'm not overly concerned if I do choose to you know, stay as a solo developer in the future. But yeah, I mean, it would be cool to have a team as well. It would be cool to be able to you know, output a bit faster maybe, and you know, be able to do more with the production values of the game, you know, graphics and all that. And sure, yeah, I'd be open to it in the future for sure.
As we remember, you've deleted all 18 plus content. How have feedback changed after that? Do you feel that average age of Streets of Rogue gamers has become lower? Do you miss cocaine? By the way, tell us more about that imperfect condom. How did you want this mechanic to work?
For that imperfect condom. So first off, I'm not sure what you're referring to there. What's that all about?
You don't remember?
I'm afraid I don't.
So one day, one gamer posted a screenshot with imperfect condom that he found in the body of that musician. So it was when you just added musician to the game.
Yeah, I don't know. At some point, I had the idea of like having prostitutes in the game, and you'd be able to have sex with them, and you could get like a venereal disease or something if you didn't use a condom. And then I ended up scrapping that because, yeah, I mean, the game doesn't really have like sex references. I mean, I do want kids to be able to play the game. So yeah, getting back to the question about 18 plus stuff. So yeah, I removed like cocaine and steroids from the game. Because there was some reasons for that actually. I mean, well, first off, I mean, I guess the major thing is, yeah, like that can get your game banned in Australia or maybe some other places. I don't think that would fly in like China as well. And you know, it's like you got to pick your battles. Like it doesn't. I don't really care enough about these things being in the game, you know, to get banned in a certain region. So, and plus, like having cocaine be sugar is just funnier to me, and it kind of fits in with the universe a bit better. It felt a little bit jarring to me to, like, you know, have this sort of have like these kind of like two random drug references, like to real drugs out of nowhere. Like it just felt a little bit jarring to me. So I mean, for yeah, creatively, I think it works better the way it is right now, to be honest with you. Right. So that, yeah, I think that got in the game because the musician character had been in the game for a while, like as something I had put in like a long time ago, and eventually I decided to actually add the musician to the game. It had been like in the code for a while, but I hadn't decided to add it. So there was some leftover stuff in the code from a very much earlier point in the game development when he was supposed to be carrying a condom. So that just got left in for like a build or two. What build was 44? 44, okay. Yeah, but like, yeah, most of the 18 plus stuff, like, I think there might have been like a couple of sex references that I removed. Again, it's just a matter of like, yeah, I would rather kids just be able to play this game, and I'm not gonna like ruin things just because of a couple of references. So I don't think the average age of Streets of Rogue players has changed at all or anything because of this. I don't think it's made any impact whatsoever.
We have some memes created by the community. One of them is called a ghost. Several people at different times asked us if you would add an intangible ghost as a playable character. It caused other guy to post a meme with naked sexy man who wants to play a ghost under every changelog translation. We think that Streets of Rogue needs more Easter eggs and things aimed not only to pop culture but to Streets of Rogue's own community. So will you increase amount of Easter eggs? You've given us a link in your to-do list about secrets already.
So yeah, regarding a ghost, so here's the thing, there are ghosts in the game, but you become a ghost in 2-player mode or in online mode when you die. So I can't really add a ghost character because, you know, what's going to happen to a ghost if they, like a playable ghost character, what's going to happen to a ghost if they, how does that even, I don't know, there's probably a way to do it, but I'd rather just, to avoid confusion and such, and I'd rather just keep the ghost to like something that happens when you die in multiplayer mode. We increase the amount of Easter eggs. Yeah, I'd like to put in more stuff like that at some point. The thing about developing this game, the difficult thing is it's like I always have to prioritize, and if it comes down to like, you know, putting in some random extraneous stuff into the game, or like, I don't know, fixing bugs or improving balance or adding new like real like meaningful content to the game, I'll always choose that stuff, which is why, like, you know, the main menu for the game is kind of like, you know, bare bones, because I haven't really, you know, it's not flashy or anything. I just haven't really spent the time, spent a whole lot of time working on it, because I always prioritize just the main game over pretty much everything else. Same goes for the home base. You know, it's like I could do more work on that and adding things to it, but I'd rather just the core game, you know, inside the actual like going through level to level, be as good as possible. So yeah, I always want to add stuff like this, stuff like Easter eggs, but it's just hard to find the time. I'm actually kind of unaware of the sort of like memes and stuff going on in your community, because I don't really even see your. Are you referring to the VK site, or is there something else I'm not aware of?
I'm referring to Wiki and Steam page of Streets of Rogue.
Yeah, yeah, I occasionally look at some of the communities. I'll have to have another look at that stuff. I don't look at that stuff often enough. I usually just read the forums.
Well, sometimes it's kind of weird stuff, like Streets of Ragu. It was, and I think still on the top place of memes about Streets of Rogue.
Yeah, I think I saw that. I was like, what the heck? What the heck? Yeah, it's funny though. Streets of Ragu. Sounds delicious.
By the way, about secrets, tell us, Matt, what do you want to add behind the door on the home base?
I've been thinking about that for a long time, and I never really found. Same thing with the safe in the home base. I wanted to add something to that, and I never really found a. Um, I don't know. Like I was thinking for a while, like I might add a room with like a whole bunch of nuggets or something like that, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't really know for sure. I couldn't really tell you. Um, Maybe eventually, or it would be kind of fun. Like if I did a sequel to this game, like the game starts out with you like exiting there and like exiting the city or something, and like I don't know, going out into the world outside of the main city. I don't know. That maybe there's something behind that. Maybe that's an idea. Um,
If you want, you can make a Fortnite discussion about it.
That's a good idea, actually. I'm always looking for topics for that. What's behind the door? Yeah, yeah. But as of right now, the honest answer is I do not know. I do not know the answer. But technically speaking, I think if you have a really super widescreen monitor, you might be able to see, and it's not much. It's not much that's there right now.
What are you going to add to the game to make it more replayable?
I guess the answer is just more stuff. I mean, I have more content planned for the game. There are a lot of things that I had hoped to add to the different levels. A lot of items that I have that I've gotten suggestions for. I have a whole big list of things I could potentially add to the game. Traits. I mean, there's just a whole lot of content related stuff that I'd like to add after launch. As of right now, the only thing I'm going to be doing for the next, or at least until the game launches to 1.0 and launches on all the consoles, is I'm basically just doing bug fixes and balance fixes right now and trying not to break anything too badly. Because, like I was saying, we're in console certification right now, so if I add like a big new feature or a new item that doesn't really work as expected, that could end up in like a broken console version for a while, or the game, or even worse, the game might not pass certification if there's something really broken in the game. So right now I just have to be really careful about what I add and what I fix and how I fix things. But yeah, post 1.0, I can add anything I want. I can go back to adding whatever content I've built up in my ideas list. So I guess that would be your answer, just more stuff. I mean, like Binding of Isaac, I think that's had like 7 years worth of content at this point. I mean, that game's been out since 2011, and the most Rebirth has been out since 2014, and they just keep adding to it. So it's like you never see the same thing twice. Yeah, I mean, we'll see how things go after launch. If the game does really well, maybe I could be working on this for a bunch more years. I probably won't want to do that. I'll probably want to move on to something else at some point. But at least for the next, like 2018, 2019, I'm not planning on working on anything else this year at least. Maybe start doing some research on a sequel, but beyond that, just adding stuff to Streets of Rogue. Tell us more about your plans. Do you think you will make everything that was promised till 1.0 release? Will you make and show everyone a roadmap of Streets of Rogue after 1.0's development? Do you have any ideas about the future project? Will there be DLCs, Streets of Rogue 2? And you reference a very old FAQ from Burger Joint here that I wrote in 1998, where it said, "One game of this sort is quite enough." Yeah, boy, that's an old ass. Oh boy. Okay. Wow. That's going back far. So first off, it says here everything that was promised before till 1.0 release. So I do remember I was very careful about not promising anything. Like what I said in my announcement there was, hang on a second. There's a link to it here. What I said was. These are goals and not absolute plans or promises. So let's see. yeah, I will not be able to get everything that I was hoping to in, but that's generally how game development works. You know, it's like you have plans and then you have to kind of adjust your plans to, you know, because I got to release this at some point. Got to release it on consoles at some point, and you know, I think the game that comes out at 1.0 is going to be, you know, it won't have like everything that I hope to add, but at some point you just have to say, okay, this is good enough for 1.0, and you know, we can keep adding stuff after that. So yeah, I think there's some more questions you had about the specifics of that after this movie, like my goal list from last year. So I'll elaborate on that in a minute. But it says, will you make and show everyone a roadmap of Streets of Rogues after 1.0 development? I'm not sure if I'm gonna do like a roadmap or just kind of like add stuff and make it be a surprise and have it be just random. Do you have any ideas about your future project? Will it be DLC? So I mean, yeah, aside from adding more content, Streets of Rogue 2 is something I'm very interested in doing. That's actually the current Fortnite discussion on the Steam forums. Just ideas for what that would be. I have some ideas myself. I mean, as of right now, and I mean, this is just speculation. What I would like to do is just do like sort of an open world version of the game, kind of like a little bit like, you know how like Diablo was a dungeon, and then Diablo 2 kind of expands things out into the world. Kind of be like that, but much more expansive, more like kind of like Daggerfall, like where everything's randomly generated, but you still have this giant world full of randomly generated stuff and things you can kind of come back to, and maybe some locations that are static as well. You know, like the home bases now. So I mean that's a possibility. Again, I'm just speculating at this point. But I think whatever I do will probably use the original Streets of Rogue as a base, because, you know, I mean, I spent 5 years on this, you know, building up the game and the engine and the way things interact with each other and fixing bugs. So I'm not going to be starting from scratch. That's for sure. But I would like to change. I would like to add a lot. There's a lot of things that I could have potentially added to Streets of Rogue that I didn't. You know, things like cars. Yeah, I definitely want to have like cars in the game. You know, multi-story buildings. Yeah, I think it'll. I think it'll be pretty fun to work on. But again, not going to happen anytime soon. Well, you have the final encounter and ending here. Like, are you good with the final boss? We think he's too easy. Are you planning on making him somehow harder to beat? So yeah, the final boss, that was a really challenging thing to do, because, you know, it's like you want the game to be winnable using a lot of different strategies and a lot of different character types. So, you know, I get a lot of suggestions about like, hey, make like a, you know, mecha mayor that shoots like rockets at you, and there's like a whole bunch of guns and stuff. But yeah, what if you're playing as like a doctor or something? How's that going to work out? You know, I wanted to make something that was, you know, winnable in a lot of, you know, a really big variety of ways with a lot of different classes. And yeah, there's always going to be ways to exploit it. And I'm actually kind of okay with the way it works now. I think there's definitely some strategies that are maybe a little bit too exploitable. By the way, there's actually a bug in the current build where you always see the mayor walking around, or pretty much most of the time you'll see the mayor walking around, as opposed to like just hanging out in different buildings. That's a bug. You're supposed to see him like occasionally like in a dance club, or like walking around his office or something, or in his house. So that's fixed in the next build. You know, I think if you've gotten that far in the game, I'm not really concerned about it just being like this overly difficult, like ultimate challenge or something. I think part of the fun is just like finding interesting ways to take him down, and you know, as you may have noticed, the ending changes based on what you do, and also the different character classes you're using. So. Yeah, I'm okay with it not being like super difficult or anything like that. Let's see. Existing levels, content, and mission variety. Are you satisfied with it now? Yeah, like I was saying, I mean, I'll definitely be adding some more stuff. More variety is always better. So, same goes with items. Will you add new items before 1.0? Not before 1.0, but after for sure. Where is the chainsaw? Eventually, I'd like to add the chainsaw in. I guess you saw the chainsaw sprite. It does exist in the game, and I was hoping to be able to add it at some point, but yeah. Probably at some point. Additional NPC behaviors, same goes for that. Yeah, I'd like to add. You know, I'm constantly like iterating on the artificial intelligence in the game and adding little new things that sometimes I don't even document in the change logs. So yeah, anything I can do to make the AI better and more, you know, less stupid. Yeah, for sure. Let's see, achievements and unlocks. So actually, yeah, 1.0. There are actually some achievements that are in the can right now that are actually in the game's code, and when Streets of Rogue 1.0 comes out, they will become immediately available. So that actually will be coming out like right as 1.0 comes out. Mutators, trade status effects, disasters. Yeah, again, I'd like to add more, just not before 1.0. Home base, extras, and building variety. So like I was saying before, it's just hard. It's always hard for me to justify like adding things in the home base, like, you know, being able to expand the home base and things, because I don't know, I feel like it's kind of like a fun little diversion, but that's not really the point of the game. You know, I mean, if you're playing this game, you want to play the core gameplay experience, and yeah, it's kind of cool to like be able to like, I don't know, to be able to dress up a room in your. Yeah, one thing I was considering was having it so that like you could create a room in the home base and just like decorate it however you wanted, but I don't know. Yeah, it's just hard to justify like working on something like that when I could just be making the rest of the game better. You know, it's like would that actually be that entertaining for people? I don't know. Yeah, I guess if there was enough demand for it, maybe, but if there was something really like low effort I could add, I always try to go for like things that I can add that are low effort and high impact, you know, so I don't think that would necessarily fall into that category, but I'm always open to suggestions for sure. You know, maybe at some point I'll add something or other. Definitely want to add more building variety though, and one thing I do want to add is is a level editor. I need to build one for myself actually. That's part of the reason I want to do that, and make it available to other people, because I don't have like a proper. I never made like a proper way for me to make levels easily. For me to make buildings easily. It's kind of a pain whenever I have to do it. And I would like to make it a lot easier for myself, as well as, you know, giving other people a chance to do that, to make their own maps. So that's something that I'd like to tackle post 1.0. Leaderboards and daily run. Let's see. So I was hoping to do something like this, to do leaderboards, and I ended up. So first off, I would have to implement a scoring system into the game, and if I did that, it would probably be based on a combination of like the player's experience points and the time they take to finish levels. You know, just doing some kind of calculation there. I don't know, like again, it just hasn't really been like that much of a demanded feature. Like that was sort of the original point of Daily Run, was I was gonna you know, try to do leaderboards like something like Nuclear Throne has, or Spelunky. And you know, maybe it'll still happen in the future. I'm not going to rule that out. But yeah, just haven't had the chance as of yet. And apparently, adding that to consoles is a big hassle, actually. so I just kind of put it on the back burner. Prettifying menus and other out-of-game aesthetics. Last year you improved the menu, added some stuff on the logo in the beginning, special soundtrack. Will you make anything else? Probably not. I'm okay with it the way it is. It's about as flashy as it needs to be, which is to say not very much. And you know, it functions as a menu. Again, the game is the most important thing. Console versions, how does it go? Yeah, so in development right now for, I believe, yeah, the Xbox and Switch have been announced. The game may be in development for another platform as well, which has not been announced, but you can probably guess what it is. So that's, I think they might have actually submitted to certification for Xbox yesterday. And you know, if it gets through that, then the game can appear on the Xbox. We'll be submitting to Switch pretty soon as well. Yeah, the game's I think it's gonna have like all the features from the PC version in it. It's gonna have the online multiplayer mode. It's gonna have the co-op mode. It's gonna have split screen. Yeah, the consoles are. It's been a challenge getting it on there because the consoles are much less powerful than a PC, and you know, Unity is not the easiest thing to. The game is running on the Unity engine, and if you played other Unity engine games on the Switch, especially, you know, it's a pretty underpowered console, and you might have seen a lot of frame rate issues. Been trying to work that stuff out. You know, I don't think it's going to be up to the level of the PC, of what you get on like a really good PC or something like that. But it'll definitely be playable. I think people are going to enjoy it on the Switch. I haven't actually. It's funny. The porting team is actually in Seattle, and I'm in Los Angeles, so I have not actually personally seen the game running. I've just gotten their reports. So that's really. It's exciting and frustrating to me that the game is like running on this cool little portable console, and you know, I can't even witness it right now. I'd really like to see that. I'd really like to play it on the Switch. I don't know. I kind of want to like fly out there and check it out. But yeah, so things are going well on that end, and we don't have like a full release date for the full version for 1.0 just yet. But hopefully in the next month or so, maybe. I don't know. We'll see how things go. Okay, well, thanks very much. Thanks to your community for helping out with these questions, I guess, and hopefully this has been informative.